Hey guys, it's your boy Wolf taking a step back from the Wolfgang's journey to talk about sad news in professional wrestling today. Sabu tragically passed away at the age of 60. Um, it's a little difficult just because, 3 weeks after his retirement match, that's pretty wild. Um, so I wanted to talk a little bit about my interactions with Sabu. Um, they're pretty funny. So anyways, I want to talk about how I first got interested in Sabu, and that was through wrestling magazines. Back then, pre-internet, 1995, you either got into tape trading, which I did, or wrestling magazines. I remember it being some off-brand wrestling magazine that showed pictures of Sabu in ECW, where he refused to leave the ring until he broke the table. And they pointed out how it took 4 attempts for him to do so. And I thought that was just one of the wildest things ever. There was also another off brand where he was on the cover and it was like the most insane wrestler ever. And they did a big cover story on him. So with that, I obviously my one of my birthdays, barely legal, was on my birthday. So that was my birthday present from my aunt. Was able to watch that pay-per-view. And then a little bit later, I can't remember how much later it was, they had the Born to Be Wired VHS. And so I remember having to convince my mom to buy it for me. And she had no idea. She was just like, oh, it's just pro wrestling, whatever. She ended up getting my grandpa to buy it for me. And so I'm watching it one time and she walks in and she goes, "Oh no. No, you cannot be involved with this. You cannot watch this anymore." Unfortunately, for me, or fortunately for me, ECW aired 1 in the morning on MSG, so she was in bed, and thankfully I had a TV in my bedroom, and so I would fake going to sleep. The house would be quiet, and then I would turn it on. I would obviously have to play it at the lowest volume possible, but I was still able to watch it and still able to get my Sabu fix. So let's fast forward into the 2000s. I don't remember what year it was, but it was during when they were doing the Ballpark Brawl series here in Buffalo, New York, at the Buffalo Bison's ballpark. They were good shows. I was a little too young to be involved in them. I think it was around that time when I was like 16. I know I was in high school and, I was involved in wrestling, but I wasn't doing anything yet. That was more of like my introduction, probably 2002, 2003-ish. And it was interesting because during the show, Lanny Poffo came and sat next to me, and I was able to talk to him. And that was a great conversation. And then, he basically was just like, "Hey, you want to meet some guys?" And I was like, "Fucking I do." And so, I got to meet a few people. Sabu was one of them. It also helped that one of the main security guards happened to live on my street and knew I was a wrestling fan. So he also like helped me get in and do some of the meetings. And so I met Sabu, I met Jimmy Snuka. Both of them had to have been on something because they were out of control. To the point where I believe they ended up getting banned from Petty Bones, which was the in stadium uh, restaurant. It was kind of a fancier place. Um, but the rumor I heard, and I wasn't there obviously because I was not 21, was that Jimmy Snuka and Sabu got really, really messed up and decided to do Superfly, and Sabu like splashes through tables, and it led to absolute chaos. So I remember a few years later after that was WrestleMania 23. I wasn't even supposed to go, but a friend of mine, one of their people bailed on their ticket and they already paid for it. So it was a free ticket, a free weekend to WrestleMania 23. All of the stuff, like we got to see the Condemned release prior to it in theaters. We got to see the Hall of Fame. We went to some breakfast thing, and we also went to a meet and greet where I met people like Randy Orton, Candice Michelle, Kane, William Regal. And then at the end, there was this, where you got to sit and take a group picture. And one of the pictures was Sabu, Lillian Garcia, and Rob Van Dam. And I don't know if I can get a good view of this, so let me try. Maybe not. Okay, so oh, oh, there it is. So look at that picture and look at how Sabu has me completely pulled in his direction. And so he remembered meeting me at the ballpark brawl, and he was just like, "Hey man, good to see you again. Good, good to see you doing some stuff, brother." And so I was telling him how, at that point I was doing referee work. I was traveling, across Ontario, across New York, Erie, PA, and he was like, "Yeah, man, you got to get yourself out there. You got to know what you're doing." And it was funny because RVD and like Lillian were trying to be nice, trying to be cordial and talk to me, but Sabu just kept going, "Hey Rob, this is the guy I was telling you about." And I'm like, "What the fuck is he telling Rob about me?" And so he was like, "Yeah, man, he was there at the ballpark stuff. He was there." And I was like, "Kinda." But anyways, so we start talking. It's literally just Sabu. Just I don't know if he's just talking me up, just doing whatever. But he at the end he was like, "Bro, you got any drugs?" I'm like, "No, but we have Coronas, and I know someone who I could probably get weed from." And he's like, "Oh man, what floor are you on?" Because we were staying at the same hotel as them. I think it was called the Ford Tower or something. I don't remember, but it was a giant like skyscraper of a hotel, and they were on like the 55th, 56th, and 57th floor, and we were on the 52nd. And so I told him, like, "Yeah, we're on the 52nd floor." And he was like, "All right, man, after everything's done, I'm going to come down and we're going to, go hammer some stuff down." And I'm like, "Fuck yeah, let's do this." And like, I'm going to get hammered and messed up with Sabu. Like, count me in. He never showed up. So not surprising. Um, so a few years after that on Twitter, when it was still called Twitter, I reached out to him and I was just like, "Hey, Sabu, long time no speak. What happened to WrestleMania weekend?" And he DMs me, and I wish I still had the DM, um, or, any type of interactions I had with him. And he was just like, "Yeah, fuck Fit Finley." And I'm like, "Why?" He said, "Well, he was the agent. And he said that he was going to blow me in because I was past curfew." And so I just start rolling. And I'm like, no worries, man. We'll hit it up again later. And he's like, "Yeah, next time I'm in Buffalo, I'll let you know, and we'll get screwed up." And I was like, "Bet." At that time, I was ingesting anything that was thrown my way, and no questions asked. And but that never happened. And then after that, maybe like a couple of weeks later, he was saying how he was hurting for money, and he was selling pieces of table with barbed wire wrapped around them, and they would be signed. And me being nice, I'm just like, "Oh yeah, how much are you talking about?" And I think he said something like $500. It was some outrageous price. And I was like, "Bro, I can just go to Home Depot and probably get all that stuff." And he was like, "All right, man. Yeah, I see what's up. I know. Nope, no hate, no hate." And so it was just hilarious interactions with Sabu. Always funny. A carny to the very end, obviously being brought up by, the Sheik, his uncle, who, lived kayfabe. Like, the man never talked in public. He always lived his gimmick until the day that he died. The only really recordings we have of the Sheik's voice are from like radio, or not radio, audio recordings where he was Ed Farhat, the Detroit promoter, but nobody really ever saw his face or anything like that. As Ed Farhat, he was always the Sheik, and just like the Sheik, Sabu was very much similar in the sense that he lived his gimmick. He lived everything that he did. He was just as wild outside of the ring as he was inside of the ring. So those were just some of the funny stories I had about Sabu. I always liked him. I always thought it was cool. He was a carny trying to sell me on stuff up to the very end. He would call me brother one minute and then try to sell me like piece of table that he signed, or he would say it was like ring used, and it's like, "No, bro, like I know it's not. Like I'm privy to what's going on, and I know what you're doing. I appreciate it because the wrestler fan wrestling historian in me was absolutely like, this is phenomenal because he's trying to work me." And I just had to cordially go, "No, man, no, I'm sorry." But he always seemed like a good time. I hear wild stories. There's some stuff I can't say, but I know when I worked with Tommy Dreamer a few times and I was the wheelman for him, he gave me some stories about a hotel in Philadelphia, that I'm pretty sure others can give more depth than I can. But yeah, some of the stuff that I've heard about him was absolutely insane. He literally lived the homicidal, suicidal, genocidal gimmick. And, he went out the way that he probably wanted to. He had his retirement match, that was it. The business, was done for him. And, this was his livelihood. This was his identity. I don't know how or what happened. And it's not really open for speculation, and it doesn't, at the end of the day, matter. The fact that he's no longer with us is what matters. He lived a wild life, and honestly, I'm surprised he made it to 60, to be completely honest. He was looking a little haggard, which is to be suspected, knowing what I know about some of the stuff he did, and ingested, and just the stories he told me about himself. Some of them are, I don't think they're believable. I don't think they really happened. Maybe like part of it, and I think he's just making shit up as he went along. Um, but yeah, I wanted to take a break from my journey, my road to the dream, to talk about Sabu and how many interactions I had with him and how they were fun, even though like he was trying to do like the old Carney stuff. I still really enjoyed it. He also like no hate. He was, I know a lot of people said like he was kind of a dick or an asshole to them, but he was never like that to me. Not that we had like 1,000 interactions, but the dozen or so that we did were really cool. And especially, going back to the ballpark brawl, I was 16, 17 at the time. He could have played full gimmick. He could have just, stared and just did this the whole time. And, it still would have been cool. But, he was a true professional with me. Once I told him, I was learning, I was training to be in the business. He didn't gatekeep. He didn't try to like kayfabe me. He was really cool. And, the fact that here's the thing about that. The fact that Sabu even spoke a word to me was one of the coolest things ever, was the fact that, he wasn't really the homicidal, suicidal, genocidal, non-verbal, crazy man. I mean, he was still crazy, but the fact that I was able to have a conversation with him in 2002, 2003, was pretty wild to me. And that was extremely enjoyable experience. Again, never had a bad experience with him other than the fact that, I had to sit as far away from Lillian as possible, and I'm sorry that this isn't coming in very clear. Um, it's probably because my background, but there you see it right there. There's a good view of it. Sabu, Rob Van Dam, and Lillian Garcia, and Sabu literally bogarting the entire time, the entire visit. So with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and end this video. I just wanted to give a few of my thoughts and a few of my experiences with Sabu. May he rest in peace. May he go ahead up in the wrestling ring in the sky, now joining his uncle, having Ring of Fire matches, using pencils and swords and God knows what else up there, wreaking complete havoc. Um, Probably won't be long for up there. They'll probably send him down. Now that him and his uncle are together, going to raise hell, and they'll probably be sent to there. And Sabu might even tell you, like, might have even told you that, that's where he was going to go based on all the nonsense he did in his life. Um, Still, sad day, but to the people that had enjoyable experiences with him, remember those times. And yeah, I'll be back probably tomorrow. No, maybe Tuesday. I don't know. I don't have much of an update for myself right now. Just keep grinding, keep working, you know. So yeah, I want to say thank you guys for all the subscribers, all the views. I did not expect this to take off the way that it has. Just my last two videos in my short, with my short having 1.6 thousand views. That's absolutely wild. My last Wolfgang's Journey video over 200 views. My getting knocked out over 200 views. I'm just over the moon over that. So if you can, please subscribe so that way you're up to date. Please like and share. That keeps me motivated. That gives me more motivation than ever. The fact that these three videos have that many views has me completely motivated and ready to kick ass and take the world by storm. And so I just want to take this time to say thank you. And I hope that my journey as it continues, will help you guys see the progress that I've made. And I want you guys to know that I'm going to work as hard as possible to make this a reality. So, have a great day. Enjoy this Sunday. It's beautiful here. It's 60 some degrees out. I'm about to go take a walk outside, get my steps in. And so hopefully you guys are doing the same. Enjoy life, enjoy the weather. And if you have a dream, make sure you go ahead and try to live it no matter what anyone else says. So take care for now. I'll see you next time.